The Dodgers maybe have named their two starters for the Japan series, and while they're the good starters for Japan, are they the best starters for the Dodgers? Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans, welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us where you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. You can make that easier by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we go live on YouTube. If this is your first time listening, watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. I'm usually joined by Jeff Snyder, but it's just me today. Jeff and I are both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team for over a decade in a few different ways. One of those ways being this here podcast, which we're now going into year 7 doing together, and we've been podcasting about the Dodgers a little longer than that. So we have talked a lot about the Dodgers. We've watched a lot of Dodger games, and we will continue to do both of those things in 2025. And we now know who we are probably going to see on the mound once games start counting in just over a month. Dave Roberts mentioned that Yoshinobu Yamamoto would start game 1 for the Dodgers in Tokyo for the Japan series, and he didn't quite say Roki Sasaki would pitch game 2, but he said with Roki, the plan is for him to pitch there. We'll figure out when, but you got to imagine if he's going to pitch in one of the games, it would probably be, the game that matters. The Dodgers would have some exhibition games out there, so he could still pitch out there, and it wouldn't make a huge difference. But is this the right decision for the Dodgers? And Yamamoto for sure is an easy one. He was going to slot in 1 or 2 in this rotation realistically, anyways. So the fact that he's going to pitch game 1 against another Japanese pitcher in Shota Imanaga, that just sets up a great matchup that obviously MLB probably anticipated when they made the decision to put those two teams in Tokyo for the opener over there. And for the Dodgers, realistically, if you were going with your top 2 pitchers to start your first 2 games, it's Blake Snell and Yamamoto at this point. Based on, splitting hairs, you can go Glasnow, Yamamoto. Yamamoto was pretty solid last year overall when he was healthy, though. So, he would get the nod there. But Roki, this is a guy who just pitched in Japan last year, a guy that obviously has huge notoriety over there. And I think it may help with the pressure if his first start with the Dodgers is in Japan and, where he feels a little bit more comfortable. Like I said, whether exhibition game or not, I got to imagine they'd let him start the game that mattered, though. And, Blake Snell and Glasnow and whoever else can pitch in the exhibition games. But obviously it's all going to come down to how spring training goes for these guys. And Yamamoto, now being through a major league spring training, knows what to expect, especially with the shorter timeline. He did start in Korea last year. Obviously, it wasn't a great start at all, but, he recovered from that to be very good for the Dodgers, especially when it counted in October. So he's an easy choice, and it makes a lot of sense. I don't think Blake Snell should be upset if Roki Sasaki does get the start over there, because Blake Snell knows, what the deal is, and he realistically should probably get the opening day start when they come back home to Dodger Stadium. Probably Yamamoto gets opening night start when they get the rings, which would, make a lot more sense since he was a big part of that playoff run. So for me, I'm completely fine with this decision if it ends up being Yamamoto and Sasaki. Realistically, they could all pitch, like Roki and Blake Snell and Yamamoto and Glasnow could all pitch in Japan if the Dodgers decide to go a route of maybe some piggybacking. And we saw that last year with how many extra pitchers they had over there and the taxi squad that they had over there. And knowing that you're only playing 2 games and you can reset the roster, you don't have to carry 8 relievers. You could carry 6 relievers and carry a couple of or actually, no, you can carry more relievers because you only need 2 starters. But if you do carry the 4 starters, you still have a full arsenal to go in the bullpen. And honestly, I think that's what might happen. I think Yamamoto could be a guy that starts, and then they could have somebody waiting behind them, or that could be more of a regular game. Roki could be, hey, Blake Snell or Tyler Glasnow, you're coming in after him. I don't know if the Dodgers want to do that just for the simple fact of Snell and Glasnow are going to start every game this year, and you don't, maybe want to throw them out of their routine, especially when that routine's already cut short in terms of spring training and when that routine's cut short because of where they're at and everything going on. So it could just be, you know what, Yamamoto give us 4 or 5, Roki give us 3 or 4, and we'll let the bullpens do the job from there. And, that is perfectly fine for the Dodgers. And I don't think there's going to be any egos this year anyways. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I don't anticipate there being any issue with these guys being the choice for the Dodgers to start in Japan. And it should be fun. It's one of those things where I think it's cool for us as Dodger fans. Oh, they're playing in Korea. Now they're playing in Japan. I do agree. Like, if you knew you were going to go to Japan in 2025, maybe you shouldn't have sent the Dodgers to Korea in 2024. I understand for MLB, they probably want to send the Dodgers everywhere, especially when it comes to opening the season. Last year coming off the Ohtani and Yamamoto signing, this year coming off a World Series championship and the Roki, Sasaki, among others, signing. So I do hope the Dodgers get a normal season next year, don't have to start anywhere and can just go through their normal spring training and everything else. But this one is going to, like Japan, with all the guys that are on both teams, 5 players between the both teams, it's going to be exciting. They love baseball out there. They're crazy about baseball. They're crazy about their countrymen that play in the big leagues, and they're very passionate. I remember going to Korea versus Japan in the World Baseball Classic final in, what was that, 2009 or 12, one of those years at Dodger Stadium, and that was one of the more fun and honestly, heated, intense games I've ever been to in terms of the fans. You have the fans with the drums and the chants and, celebrations and all that type of stuff. And, Korea and Japan, there's a rivalry there in terms of baseball supremacy. And, Korea's fallen off a little bit in the last couple World Baseball Classics. Japan's kept it going. Obviously, they won the last one. But they love their baseball, and it's going to be exciting to see what that stadium does and brings to this, and especially if Yamamoto, Imanaga, and Roki Sasaki are 3 of those 4 starting pitchers in those 2 games. That's definitely gonna, bring the roof down, or however the kids say these days. But yeah, for me, no issue here. I do expect Blake Snell to start opening day when we come back, Yamamoto opening night, and then we'll kind of go from there. Some of this may lend into what I'm going to talk about next, which is the bullpen and or rotation, because we thought that maybe Michael Kopech had escaped the injury bug, and it was a case of mistaken identity, because we found out Evan Phillips was the one that was maybe going to start the season on the IL and be limited here in the spring early on. But we did get word that Michael Kopech is also a part of that may start the season a little slower or on the injured list. So what does that mean for the spring and for the Dodgers rotation and pitching staff as a whole? That's what we're going to get into. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. I got my bag right here. The green screen kind of takes it out, but there you go. Wonderful Pistachios, a great snack to have when you're watching sports, or when you're in the middle of the day, or if you're on the run, or whatever the case is. I'm traveling for work, and I got this wonderful bag of pistachios here with me to take and enjoy on the plane if I need to, or in my backpack if I'm on the go and I need something to keep my protein up and everything else. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Well, thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. You can make that easier by subscribing. And you can also check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are two 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you the biggest news and stories from the sports world and the LA sports world. And let's talk about the Dodgers and their pitching and, maybe a little more. I know there was a complaint or two in the live show yesterday about the Dodgers' transparency with injuries. And maybe we're getting a little bit of that here. Michael Kopech was reportedly going to miss a month when the season started after the Dodgers signed Tanner Scott. Bob Nightingale reported that. But then Brandon Gomes and Michael Kopech had kind of said maybe that's not going to be the case. So, and then we found out Evan Phillips had an injury, a legitimate injury last year heading into the World Series, and tried to start his throwing program and got delayed by a month. So he's going to be behind schedule. And we thought, okay, maybe mistaken identity, but it appears that might not be the case. Michael Kopech, it said that he's dealing with a lingering injury and that he is a little behind schedule along with Evan Phillips. He said they both could be candidates to open the season on the IL, but it would depend how they're able to build up in the next couple of weeks. And I think for Phillips, realistically, it just doesn't make sense to push him. If you started your entire throwing program a month later than you anticipated, then there's no reason for you to try to make up that month now. And obviously, the throwing program for a reliever is a little bit different than a throwing program for a starter. You don't have to stretch out as much in terms of number of pitches. You're probably more focused on pitching back-to-back days, maybe some up downs in case you go, out of one inning into the next, and a couple of little things like that. But you don't have to worry about, building up to 90 pitches. So it is a little easier for a reliever to build himself up in maybe a faster timeline. But like we talked about yesterday with Phillips, I don't think it's necessary to do that with the amount of arms the Dodgers have, and they can answer some other questions in an easier way without having to worry about somebody being DFA'd or optioned unfairly or anything like that. Now with Michael Kopech, it's essentially the same thing. Like it is, hey, you know what? If it's going to take you a couple extra weeks to get into the roster, it's not a big deal because we have a lot of arms and we can see what we're doing and how we're going to do it and how we're going to attack. And that's how it should be. Like the Dodgers built this depth for a reason and built this team around getting ready for October for a reason. And honestly, with the way it's kind of setting up with, 4 legitimate starters, you probably want 2 more before Ohtani sets up, but you do have a lot of names and a lot of guys. And, there's only so much space and so many options available. And, there is some stuff that you're going to have to figure out. I definitely think this opens the door more for Dustin May, like we talked about yesterday, and a little bit more, obviously. Dustin May, I have no idea. I don't think Roberts has been asked about the plan for him now, if he's, being built up as a starter, being built up as a multi-inning guy, being built up as a reliever. But in a already crowded pitching staff with 2 guys down and you're a guy that doesn't have any options left, then it makes sense, that the door's open for you a little bit to prove your stuff. And it could be proving your stuff to remain with the team for the entire season or beyond when these guys come back from injury, or it could be proving your stuff and be, potential trade bait. I don't know what else the Dodgers could go after at this point other than prospects because, their 26-man roster is essentially full. Their 40-man roster is pretty full, and they're not necessarily lacking in any spot right now. Backup catcher would probably be the biggest spot where they're lacking, but Austin Barnes is not going to go anywhere unless he gets hurt. And when it comes to Chris Taylor, we don't know what's going to happen there. So there's question marks, but realistically, there's not any room on the 26-man roster. So, if Dustin May performs very well this spring and earns a spot on the roster, maybe a team that's looking for a starting pitcher or a team that sees him in the spring and says, oh, maybe we just got a guy that got hurt, or, hey, maybe we needed another starter after all, and we're willing to give up, a prospect. The Dodgers have done well taking flyers on guys. The Dodgers have done well scouting other teams, farm system. So there's a lot to like about that situation, but it doesn't just open it up for Dustin May. Obviously, Tony Gonsolin is a question mark at this point. You would imagine he's being built up as a starter. You would imagine he might be slotted in as a number 5 or 6 guy at the moment behind Snell, Yamamoto, Sasaki, and Glasnow. And that would make a lot of sense. We've never seen Tony Gonsolin be bad in the major leagues. We've seen him be just okay and that was when he was dealing with injury the entire season, kind of like Bobby Miller last year. It took me a while to recognize that parallel of Gonsolin had, his quote unquote worst season. It wasn't as nearly as bad as Bobby Miller's was, but we found out later that he was pitching with some discomfort the entire year. And, when his ERA looks like this over his career, 2.93, 2.31, 3.23, 2.14, and 4.98, that probably paints that story to be true of him dealing with injuries. So, but I definitely think it continues to solidify him being on this roster and securing a spot, maybe more so as a starter. But it opens up, doors and lanes for Ben Kasperius and, Jack Dreyer, who's on the 40-man roster, Nick Frasso, who we have no idea what to expect from this year, Michael Grove, who, probably a best as a reliever at this point, Edgardo Henriquez, a guy that, was on the playoff roster last year and, may start the year in AAA this year just because the simple fact of how much pitching the Dodgers have, maybe opens a spot for Landon Knack to be a piggyback and or long reliever. Bobby Miller, do you slot him into the rotation or are you just trying to see how he does this spring and figure it out from there? But it does help out the Dodgers a little bit. Justin Robleski's probably the other name on there, although I would imagine he's nothing more than spot starter depth at this point. I don't think he's above anybody I just named other than maybe Dreyer and Frasso, but those guys, realistically are the man 38 and 35 and down on this 40-man roster at the moment. So it's one of those things where get Kopech right, get Evan Phillips right. Don't worry about anything else when it comes to what it does for those guys in terms of starting the season on the opening day roster. Obviously, they would love to be on the opening day roster. I'm sure they're still going to be there in Los Angeles when the Dodgers get their rings, and the Dodgers aren't concerned about them missing time in April or even May. They're more concerned about getting them right and making sure to not compromise them. And if any year more than others, the Dodgers can try and take advantage of that, this is the year to do so. And I am excited because this gives the spring a little bit more intrigue. And obviously, if Phillips and Kopech recover and, boom, 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 they're not on the Japan Series roster, but they are on the opening day roster when they come back to Dodger Stadium, then that's fine. But I do think holding them out, making sure they don't rush to come back, really opens up some of these spots and gives you a little bit of intrigue for the spring. The Dodgers don't have a lot of intrigue. They have the 13th man of position players as a spot to contend for. And then they have the number 5 and 6 spots in the rotation, as well as the rest of the bullpen spots to fight for. And with 2 spots in the bullpen from guys that are established and will be there once healthy, taking those 2 out gives you a little bit of a battle. And, if anything, it gives us something to look out for, something to watch for, and something to talk about as the spring goes on because, you'll see, oh, Dustin May looked really good. Maybe he's going to be a reliever now, or, what, Landon Knack looked really, really good. Maybe he's fighting for a rotation spot now. And, it'll give us those things to look out for. And you always want to have competition in spring. You don't want to go into the spring knowing everything that your roster is and what it's going to be. And the Dodgers have had different competitions in the past. And, sometimes it brings the best out of people. Andy Pages probably wasn't on the Dodgers' radar in terms of being on the roster as long as he was last year, but he had a really good spring that showed us that he didn't have any ill effects from his shoulder surgery. And then, the Dodgers had injuries and needed him up, and he came up and performed really well at key times and, even was on the postseason roster and everything like that. So there is some good spring training to have some competition and to see what some people can do. And I'm excited for that. So speaking of that competition, the Dodgers mentality heading into a new season, heading into a season as reigning champions, you obviously wouldn't expect them to be anything else but saying the right things. But we had some of the veteran players say some of those things, and it really gets you into their headspace as to what they're looking for in 2025. So we're going to talk about that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. We want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one an everydayer, it's just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate those of you that are already everydayers. We appreciate those of you that are listening right now that aren't everydayers, because now is your chance to become an everydayer. You just have to listen or watch every single day. If you're not ready for that type of commitment, just add one episode to your week. We're here 5 days a week during the week. Why not? If you're at one episode a week, make it 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and so on and so forth. We're in Dodger season, baby. The games are going to start next week. There's a lot to be intrigued about. There's a lot to be excited about. And why wouldn't you want 30 minutes of Dodger talk in your ear or on your TV? So make sure to do that. And remember, you can always go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers and get text directly from us, keeping you up to date on the Dodgers moves and rumors and all that type of stuff. And you can also get an exclusive link to a Discord server that other Dodger fans are a part of, other Locked On Dodgers Insiders are a part of. And I'm sure as the season starts kicking off here, we're going to get pretty active in that chat. So make sure to go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers for that. And let's talk Dodgers. Let's talk mentality. Let's talk the 2025 season. And, there was an article in the LA Times from Jack Harris, and he talked to some of the Dodgers. And the headline is, "Hungrier than ever, Dodgers open spring training, focus on avoiding World Series hangover." And I'll just read some of the quotes that are here from some of these guys. And Austin Barnes echoes our sentiments on this podcast. He said it's an exciting time to be part of this organization. We're not part of the organization, but we are fans of this organization. So definitely an exciting time for us. But Mookie kind of laid it out here. He says, quote, "We can't keep thinking about being champions again. We haven't even played game one. We have to take care of spring training. And then when game one comes, then game one comes. But we can't keep talking about the World Series." Teoscar at his press conference early in the year kind of said similar things. What's in the past is in the past. We're not going to think about last year. We got our minds clear with what we need to do this year. Chris Taylor at FanFest, kind of said same thing. Can't take anything from last year and expect it to carry over this year. There's new faces. It's a new team. We have to have, it's going to be a new identity. And, Max Muncy added, quote, "We're hungrier than ever. We've had guys out here for almost 2 weeks working on ground balls, going full bore. We're not trying to let up at all." And this is something we touched on the other day when we talked about how many guys were already at Camelback Ranch, and it wasn't even full team workouts yet. And yeah, it's easy, lip service is easy to be a part of. And, when it comes to the Dodgers, I don't think this is lip service in any way, shape, or form. And I do think that this team knows what's out in front of them. Last year they knew what was out in front of them, getting Ohtani, getting Yamamoto, kind of taking that first step into being baseball's villains maybe. And, Mookie said it, every team's World Series is going to be against us. And, we saw that maybe not on the field so much, sometimes on the field, but, maybe more in the social media sphere or in, whatever sphere you're in that's outside the field, because, fans wanted their teams to beat the Dodgers, regardless of what their record was at the time, or if they had any chance of competing in the season. You beat the Dodgers, you be happy about it. And, there's been different villains across time that have been those villains for different reasons. The Yankees were like that in the late 90s, had the last time a team won 3 in a row. Then they won, then they lost in 2001, and then they came back and lost in 2003. And people enjoyed those losses. They gave up the 3-0 comeback in 2004. People love that. They love to see that, because the big bad Yankees, were the villains. Astros were the villains for a few years, the last few years, for different reasons, for, obviously what happened in 2017 and if any other years that happened, and, maybe not showing as much remorse as they could have. Maybe people were definitely upset that they weren't punished for it, and, blah, 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 this other stuff. So there's been villains. The Dodgers know that. And I do think they're embracing that role, and not in the sense of embracing being a villain, but just embracing the fact that, hey, we're probably going to get every team's best when we're on the road. We're probably going to get every fan base's, best or worst, depending on how you want to put it. And we're not worried about any of that. We're worried about the task at hand. And while it's easy for us to call the postseason basically it's going to happen at this point, formality. The reality is it's not a formality. The Dodgers still have to go out and win. We've seen quote unquote super teams, and not just in majors, but in other leagues not work out, and it hasn't necessarily been for the Dodgers. Obviously, the Dodgers have won the division almost every year the last 12 years now. They've been in the playoffs all 12 of those years. The 1 year they didn't win the division, they won 106 games. So, they have seemingly handled the regular season. And that's why us as Dodger fans, we enjoy the regular season. And Jeff and I definitely try to push people to enjoy the regular season a lot more, because you don't know what you're going to get in the postseason. Your postseason, could be done in as little as 2 games, or if you play a best of 3 to start, you can be done in as little as 3 games if you start in the NLDS, and it can go all the way to the end of October, and you can play a lot of games, and you don't know what's coming with that. But I think the Dodgers, they've done a good job in the past. I don't think anything's going to change here in terms of recognizing that the regular season matters, and winning your division is still something that you want to accomplish. Being the number 1 seed in the league and in the National League and in the entire league is still something to strive for. Did the Dodgers' home field advantage play a huge part in their win last year? I would think so. Game 5 of that Padres, starting that Padres series with 2 games at Petco, and then knowing that if you did get to a game 5, you'd have to go back to Petco. Regardless of anything you want to say about Padre fans and everything else, Petco is electric in October. The last couple times they've been there. I was there in 2022. I was there this last year, and obviously that year, the game 4 of this year's NLDS was a little bit different because the Padres got taken out of it, not super early, but kind of early, and it was back to Los Angeles. I wasn't there for game 3, but that's not somewhere you want to be to start off your postseason. Or if the Dodgers were starting over there, they wouldn't have to buy, so they would have had to start their season earlier than that, and would have opened themselves up to be eliminated earlier than that. So you don't want to have to deal with that. You don't want to have to deal with the uncertainty of where you start the series. If you are the number 1 seed, like the Dodgers were last year, every time you advance to another series, you're starting that series at home. And if it goes a distance, you're ending that series at home. And I think that is an advantage that, especially for the Dodgers, that they want to have. And I think that's something they strive for. And we talked about Miguel Rojas and mentioning, breaking the wins record and talking about 120 wins and everything else. And I'm sure that's something the Dodgers, they're striving to win every game. The Dodger players are striving to win every game. We talked about how maybe Dave Roberts isn't necessarily striving to win every game at all costs, but he's still trying to win every game, essentially. And yeah, would winning 120 games be really cool? Yes. And that would be only step 1 of what the Dodgers' plans are, which is to win the World Series. So winning 120 games essentially gets you the number 1 seed. And that's all it gets you for that moment, in that phase, and that step. Step 1, we won the most games ever. We set a record. Cool. But also we're the number 1 seed, and we know that we don't have to play that first round series. And we know every series will start, and if it goes full distance, ends in LA. And we like that, and we want to be in that position. And on top of all of this, in terms of Dodgers mentality, you have guys that are joining the team that haven't won and are striving to win. Blake Snell, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. Those guys want to win the World Series too. Those guys want to be a part of it. Roki Sasaki, he wants to be a part of that. They want the champagne celebrations. They want the rings. They want the parade. They want everything that they saw these Dodger guys get last year. And, not that you need that hunger and fight from guys that haven't won it before, but it's nice to have. It's nice to have that as like a little extra boost, a little extra, if Mookie bets, I have 3 rings already, but Mookie just wants to win in general. Mookie's trying to win as many rings as possible. He's talked about how, he's probably not going to play beyond this contract. So he wants to play out the rest of his contract, win as many rings as possible. He's not worried about anything else in terms of that. Freddie Freeman has a couple more years on his deal. I'm sure he just wants to win. Shohei Ohtani obviously wants to win. He wouldn't have structured the deal the way that he did if he wasn't committed to winning. And all those guys already have that juice, but they continue to have that juice. When you add that combined with the juice of guys that have never won before and that want to feel that and want to experience that, then you have what the Dodgers have right now. And that's just the right mentality, the right mindset, and a strong mindset going into the 2025 season. And the fact that almost all the team has been there already and they haven't had the full squad workout yet, the fact that there's guys, having fun. We've seen the videos from spring, guys, looking like they're loose, having fun, knowing, that they're getting the job done. I'm sure Mookie's been out there taking as many ground balls as possible in order to continue to get better and feel more comfortable at shortstop. And that's a guy that, like I said, has 3 World Series titles, has an MVP, is essentially a Hall of Fame lock at this point. And he's out there, grinding. So this Dodgers team is fun in that way. And I'm excited to see, last year I mentioned that with Ohtani and Yamamoto and, come up and Glasnow, and some of the expectations that were coming with this Dodger team, I have felt a little jaded after the last 2 losses in the postseason. And, maybe as a Dodger fan, it was like, maybe like, oh man, regular season is cool. I do enjoy it, but man, it sucks. Last year you had that, I want to see this regular season. I want to see what Ohtani can do. And look what we got. We got 50-50. Wanted to see what Teoscar Hernandez could do. Look, he had one of the best years, if not the best year of his career. We got to see Yamamoto be good when he was healthy. We got to see Glasnow be good when he was healthy. And we have that again. I want to see Blake Snell. I want to see Roki Sasaki. I want to see Tanner Scott. I want to see, Hai-Sung Kim if he's on the roster. I want to see Kirby Yates. I want to see all these guys, and I want to see the continued development of other guys. And there's a lot to look forward to for this Dodger team. So I don't have any concerns about them in terms of the mentality anyways, but the fact that they're out here showing it with their actions as well as their words just shows you that this team has the right combination of guys at the top and throughout the roster and throughout the organization. So it's an exciting time to be a Dodger fan. Don't you forget that. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Jeff will be on solo tomorrow. I'm traveling for work, so Jeff got you covered tomorrow. So, make sure to check back in. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go hit subscribe right now. We have a lot of people that watch that aren't subscribed. We can see the numbers on YouTube. And, we'd appreciate it if you just subscribe and make sure that you're notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live or whatever we're doing on Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you can subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Those are 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can go beyond the podcast, become a Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. You can follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments, or you can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. You can send us a voicemail or leave us a voicemail. Send us a text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or if you're at home, text my device, play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.